This time of year is known as the spring flood. I did not know that until I started reading about this, but there's a rash of decisions that come tumbling down at the end of June, typically right before the justices go on summer recess. And with Antonin Scalia now gone, it's 4-4, and 8 is not a good number for the court. As a matter of fact, I'll put that question right now to Fox News legal analyst Byron Henry. Byron, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Glad to be with you, Neil.
Yeah, same here. Good to have you again. Listen, there's so much coming down, and so much of this is so important, and essentially it's really not going to mean anything with a tied score, is it?
Well, no, but most court watchers believe that this late in the term, it's unlikely that we will have 4-4 ties, because if it's a 4-4 tie when they vote, they usually just issue that opinion in a one-sentence release and be done with it. So the fact that we're this late in the term with these cases still outstanding tells me and a lot of other court watchers that there's probably going to be a winner and loser in these cases.
Oh, so it's not necessarily going to be kicked down to a previous or another court.
Well, it could be kicked back to the court on legal grounds, but as far as a 4-4 tie, leaving the lower court ruling standing as is, I find it unlikely that they're holding 4-4 cases until the end of the term.
Okay, let me ask you about this, the whole women's health versus Cole, the story out of Texas about requiring all clinics performing abortions in the state to be ambulatory surgical centers, and that doctors performing abortions first obtain admitting privileges at a nearby hospital. Now, that's normal procedure for any other medical procedure. Why not this? It seems terribly dangerous and irresponsible. We all know what Roe v. Wade is. We know that this is the law. It's the way it is. Everyone's accepted it. Why not take adequate precautions?
Well, that's the way the Texas legislature looked at it when they were called in the special session to pass these restrictions. This is about women's health. This is about making abortion providers comply with the same standards and requirements and doctors that provide abortions as other medical facilities such as ambulatory surgical centers. Of course, those on the left take issue with the fact that they think it's a thinly veiled attempt to basically force abortion clinics to close because they can't comply with these regulations, either because of zoning requirements or they don't have the money, and basically forcing women to drive, up to 200 miles one way in order to obtain an abortion. And I think that's the real crux of the issue, is how far is too far with respect to how the regulations Texas passed, as well as what a woman must do to obtain her constitutional right. The court has recognized to have an abortion.
Is it any coincidence that the other case involving executive power is also out of Texas?
Well, and not only that one, but also the immigration case. The affirmative action case is out of Texas as well. So we kind of have a Texas trio of big cases to be decided in this presidential election year. But yes, the immigration case was initiated by Texas, but joined by dozens of other states challenging President Obama's executive action on immigration. And there's really two issues there. One, can the president just decide not to deport people who are here illegally? And even if he can decide how and when to deport people, is he allowed to change their status with the stroke of a pen and make them lawful residents entitled to government benefits, driver's licenses, and work papers without action by Congress? So those are the two big issues in that case.
I have never spoken to anyone who is in favor of that.
No, and the court was very skeptical. I believe that it's likely, this is just a guess, of course, just watching the case and whatnot and reading about it, that the court is going to say, yes, an executive can prioritize deportation as to how and when he wants to do it, but he can't change people's lawful status without action by Congress. And I think that would be a big blow to President Obama's plans with respect to immigration if that happens.
Yeah, but isn't the toothpaste already out of the tube? It was reported the other day, according to the Department of Homeland Security, that 1 million Muslims have been admitted to the United States since Obama became president. We're already seeing a flood coming across the border in Texas and other southwestern states. And it just seems to me that we've just surrendered America, and it looks a little late.
Well, I mean, it's sort of a separate issue. They're both immigration related. This case is about how President Obama treats and how the country treats the immigrants when they're here illegally already here. You're dealing with, and of course it's another huge issue, is border security and enforcement of immigration law at the border and taking that seriously, which doesn't seem to be happening over the last few years either.
Texas has been vigilant, and they've done their best with their own resources, going back to Governor Perry and so forth, about doing their best to protect the border. I know this is not really what you're reporting about. You're a legal expert, but it just seems to me that the government has not done their part and has left this up to Texas.
Well, it's sort of a catch-22. The government hasn't taken action on immigration, so Texas takes its own actions on immigration, and then they get sued because people that file the lawsuit say it's the federal government's job to do immigration, so you can't deal with it. So it's the federal government's job, and if they don't do it, Texas gets sued for taking action on its own, as well as other states like Arizona that has taken action. So it's really a catch-22 there, and really the only answer to the question is to elect, a Congress and or a president that takes immigration law seriously and plans to enforce them.
They've been talking about immigration reform all of my adult life, and nothing has ever happened, even though common sense approaches have been suggested. Is that because there's just always an election right around the corner?
Probably so, and the main issue is just, the starting point. One side wants to start with border security, the other side wants to start with immunizing those who are already here, and if you can't figure out where to start, it's never going to get done.
Can you explain what the affirmative action case is about?
Certainly. That's just the second time this case has been up to the Supreme Court, and it basically deals with the way the University of Texas system deals with discretionary admissions. They basically have race as a factor to obtain diversity on campus, and the first time the Supreme Court had the case, they said, sent it back and said, you're using race as too much of a predominant factor. We need you to go back there and figure this out. But, race cannot be a dominant factor in your decision. They made some changes. They heard the case again. It came back up, and the court took it again. So most people think that there's going to be some limiting or narrowing even further of the ability for public universities and colleges to take race into account when determining who to admit into school.
Well, Byron, everybody, its tongue is in the cheek here, but everybody realizes, oh, do I still have you? I lost him. Okay. Well, we get the gist of what's coming from the Supreme Court.